Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to inspire and motivate people to never give up on themselves or their dreams. We will chat with highly successful people from all walks of life and discuss what motivates and drives them to successfully attack life head on and never give up. Welcome to episode number 17 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and the theme of the day is adversity. Our quote of the day comes to us from Gail Lynn Goodwin. Adversity can be turned into opportunity simply by adjusting our perception and our attitude. This episode of the No Quit Living podcast is brought to you by the I3 Initiative. In today's society, it is so easy to get caught up in the drama, negativity, and uncertainty in the universe we are a part of. Against those challenges, we are committed to make the world a better place through improvement, impact, and integrity. You are invited to join our mission and learn more about our book club, membership, live events, and mastermind at i3initiative.com. That's the letter I, the number 3, initiative.com. I'm eager for today's episode, as I've been following our guest and his work for many years. In addition to being a best-selling author and one of the most well-known sales experts, he also hosts a very successful podcast show that will surpass 9 million total downloads in May of 2017. I'm honored to introduce Jeb Blount. Jeb, welcome to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
No, it's awesome to have you. I've been a big fan of your work for many years. So let's jump into the episode. So the goal of our podcast is to motivate and inspire people to never give up. I wanted to ask you if you had a personal story you could share with our audience about perseverance or a challenging time that tested you, but you kept on going and never quit.
Okay, so you're talking about my whole life. That's the thing about adversity, right? Adversity is the greatest teacher in the world. And my wife and I were just having this conversation this morning because we were talking about, I was teasing her. I was like, it's a good thing to have me around when you're, running a business, because I'm so obsessive about things, and I start on things and I won't let them go. And what we were talking about is how I've kind of gotten a little bit overweight. I wrote this new book, Sales EQ, this year, and it almost killed me. It's been a very difficult book to write because of all the research that I had to do. I had to read, I bet I read 500 research papers from neuroscientists and different people and try to dial that into something that people can understand. And when you're writing a book like that and you just get so one-minded, you don't exercise, you don't get up, you work, you smell bad because you're writing it in the middle of the night. And sort of, I've kind of been down that road. And I think it takes a little bit of that obsessiveness to deal with adversity and deal with the roadblocks. And probably my greatest story of overcoming adversity started in the Great Recession. So your listeners who are in their early 20s, they were in grade school during the recession. And for me, a Gen Xer, the recession was the biggest financial catastrophe of my lifetime. And I remember my grandfather talking about the Great Depression and just the lessons that he learned from that. He became a multimillionaire because the lessons that he learned from being so poor and not having any opportunity in the Great Depression led him to become very, very frugal with his money. And he held the same job for 45 years, but he retired a multimillionaire. And I didn't know those lessons. I didn't know that adversity. I thought things were really great. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and then we hit the 90s. There was a little tiny recession in the 90s, and then it was just like we just all made a bunch of money. So I showed up, 2006. My whole world dropped out from underneath me. I was a head of sales for a Fortune 500 company at a corner office. I flew around in the corporate jet from time to time. I entertained well. I had 2 assistants. Life was good. And all of a sudden, 2007 hit, and the job that I had my entire life that I loved, that was my identity. And this is a tough thing when you do something that you really, really love and it's your identity. That went away. All of a sudden, my real estate was all upside down. Everything in my life was turned upside down, like so many other people. I'll never forget the fall of 2007. I'd gone out with a group of clients and came back to my hotel room, and the entire market was crashing. And in your business, Chris, you probably remember that well too. And it was shocking. And in the middle of all of that, in 2007, I was forced not by my will, but because of things that were outside of my control, to rethink my entire life. And I, I didn't have the job that I loved. It was my job. It was what I loved to do. It was gone. And I went on interviews and I talked to companies, and I realized in the middle of all that going back into the corporate world, and I was interviewing for CEO jobs, but getting back in the corporate world was just not going to be something that for me was going to make me happy and was going to be fulfilling. And I'd done well in the company that I worked for because it was an entrepreneurial company. It was a large company. It was a Fortune 500 company, but it had an entrepreneurial culture. So I did what every ex-VP of sales does. I dream of writing a book. And so I wrote my first book, Power Principles. And that was the first of 8 books that I've written. And I started podcasting like you, and I built a website called salesgravy.com. And there's a deep story behind how that started. And I started working, and I worked and worked and worked and worked. And during that time, the early years, I had to make an income. So I was doing stuff that I didn't want to do to drive income. And I would do that during the day. And then I would come home, eat dinner, and then I would work all night. And so really if you go from the sort of mid 2007 all the way through 2009, when I first started really making money with my business, I don't really remember it. I mean, I didn't sleep a lot. I would go to bed 2:00 in the morning, and I would wake up at 6, and I would start all over again. And the only thing I remember is like my wife and my son. I would pick my son up every day from school. That was the beautiful thing about doing it. But my wife and my son would sit on the couch and watch TV at night, and I would be in my office, and I would work to the point. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but my body hurt. Like my everything on me hurt, and I had to keep going and keep going and keep going. I didn't know what I was doing. I was making a lot of mistakes. But in late 2009, I landed my first big enterprise account for my business, Sales Gravy. And then I landed another one, and I landed another one. And it's like all of the work that I did, it was cumulative. And, and then I kept building. And it wasn't until I would say 2010 that I didn't wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be greeting people at Walmart because I'm going to fail. We're growing rapidly. We own 3 companies now. I've got a staff of people who I'm able to give great jobs for. This year we got big enough now that we're able to provide healthcare. This year we're paying 50% of the healthcare for our people. Next year our goal is 100%. So everybody that works for us, we cover 100% of their healthcare. We've got a retirement plan where we're doing profit sharing into that, and all of the things that I wanted to build as a company are starting to come true. And we're right on the edge of our company, Sales Gravy, which is now a training and development company that we work with companies across the globe. We've a indirect channel company. I mean, we're building an empire of training, which is it's just amazing to do. But the best thing is all the people that we're able to help now inside our company. The hard thing is, like, you asked me the story. When I tell the story, nobody gets it. Like, everybody thinks you just sort of showed up and it's here. Nobody really understands the night in like 2008 when my website crashed, and I'd spent all my money on it, and it was down for a week, and I thought I'm going to die. I mean, there was a moment where I just thought I'm not going to make it. I'm going to have a heart attack. And nobody sees that. Nobody knows that, but I do. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that to me was my greatest uphill climb out of adversity.
That's a terrific story. And failure is a great motivator. And I think it comes back to the quote that we're probably all familiar with is, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. And I think your story about all that you went through from 2007 on just is a great delivery of what it takes to really put into a company, and the fact that you're paying 50% of healthcare and you got a retirement plan with a profit sharing component and aiming towards 100% covering of the healthcare next year is awesome, because that just shows you not only do you care about your employees, but it shows you clearly the huge success you've had from 2007 until today, 2017. Speaking of the books, I just finished Fanatical Prospecting a couple weeks ago, and I really enjoyed it. Although the book is clearly geared towards sales, I thought that there were some awesome points throughout the book that had plenty of overlap to succeeding in life as well. On page 6, you wrote something that I actually circled, underlined, and starred. You wrote, "Stop wishing that things were easier and start working to become better. That reminds me of one of my all-time favorite quotes, which happens to be by Jim Rome, where he said, "Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenges, wish for more wisdom." Speaking of quotes, I was curious, Jeb, do you have a favorite quote?
That's one of my favorite quotes right there. That's one of my very favorites. And that quote is, what you wrote in the book on page 6 was inspired by that Jim Rohn quote that you just read. I think that, the probably the greatest quote of all, and I have two that I really, really dig, but one of them is the Zig Ziglar quote that everybody knows: if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And I think that goes back to that spirit of gratitude. And then there's this other quote that is inspired by, I think it's attributed to Larry Bird, but I don't know that Larry Bird said this. But it's, I hate to lose more than I love to win. And when I look at like great prospectors, you take a look at fanatical prospecting. Great prospectors are incredible competitors, and that's what they do. They don't want to lose. They'll do anything to keep from losing. But when they get knocked down, this is why I love competitors in sales and really in any thing that you're doing in life where you have to achieve things. But when they get knocked down, they don't fold up like a cheap lawn chair and say, "Wow, that hurt. I don't think I'm going to do it anymore." The competitor says, "That made me mad," and they get pissed off and they try to figure out another way to get through. And you just think about the 3 great sports stories of this past year. And maybe there's 4, because Villanova, coming back with 4.7 seconds to go to beat North Carolina, who was supposed to win the NCAA championship. But think about the Indians and the Cubs. The Cubs come back. They were competitors. They got knocked down. It made them mad. They came back. You've got the Cavs, who won their championship. I think they were 4 games down. I mean, or they were in this situation where like no one had ever come back from that again. And then the Patriots, who beat my beloved Falcons. It was just a horrible thing to watch. But think about that. I mean, they're down. They're supposed to lose. And as competitors, they said, "You know what? If I can look up, I can get up." And they kept going. And so that's why I like that quote so much, because that defines me. I hate to lose. And I'll tell you, there's one more quote, and I think it's Jeffrey Gitomer who said this, and because I heard him say this in a speech one time, but he said that when you're faced with a decision, do the thing that you will remember most. And it's stuck with me my whole life. I have I live by that. I make decisions based on memory. What am I going to remember? What's going to connect with me long term? And and I think this is especially true for entrepreneurs and people who work really hard, salespeople, where you have a lot of things going on in your life. You're always faced with the decisions, and it's easy to do the decision of, I'm going to stick my head down and hang out on Facebook, or I'm going to send this email, or I'm going to do things that I think are important. It's more of, are you going to do things that are impactful? And that quote's always stuck with me.
Now, those are three great quotes. One of the things we discuss at No Quit Living quite often is getting out of our comfort zone. Can you attribute any of your success to something specific that you've done out of your comfort zone?
Oh God, I can't. Oh man, I'm out of my comfort zone every day. So that's my life. I think that that's the quote. Like when you're faced with a decision, do the thing you will remember most. That's the whole essence of that quote. Is to get out of your comfort zone. It's easy to do the things that that you do every single day. It's hard to do the things that you remember. I mean, if you think about this as a human being, if you're listening to this podcast, close your eyes and think about the things that you remember most. Almost all of them are the moments that you were out of your comfort zone. So, is there a moment that I'm out of my comfort zone? Every single day. Every single day. I'm constantly looking forward, doing things different, trying to find things that are different. And honestly, for me, I'm bored to tears when I'm in my comfort zone. Now, there's a lot of people out there that aren't like me. And I'll give you some. I always tell people, I carry my passport with me everywhere I go, just in case I'm in an airport and there's someplace I want to fly to. because I'm the always out of my comfort zone person. My wife, on the other hand, is not. And I think we all have a tendency to marry people who are opposite of us. There's a reason for that. If you marry someone just like you, it's an explosion. So if you're marrying someone who's opposite of you, they have a tendency to ground you. And an example for her is, I want to go someplace. We went to Scotland a couple of weeks ago, and we went to this thing called Uphelly Eye. It's a fire festival in Lerwick, Scotland, and the Shetland Islands. So who goes on vacation in the Shetland Islands in January when it's blowing 60 miles an hour and raining sideways to watch a bunch of people dress up like Vikings and burn a ship in the middle of the town? It's a crazy, crazy thing. But I had to get her a year in advance to get her to the point where she could get out of her comfort zone to go there. So if you're that person, if you're a person like my wife who has a very difficult time psychologically changing or moving out of your comfort zone or getting pushed out of her comfort zone, then it probably is important for you to find either a coach. And a lot of people hire my coaches that we have an elite coaching program. They hire my coaches who spend most of their time getting people to move out of their comfort zone, or to be like me, be like my wife. You marry somebody who's like me, her whole life is fighting me, moving her out of her comfort zone, because I'm I'm all over the place all the time. Or you hang around with people, find people who are like me, who are getting out of their comfort zone all the time, who will push you to do something different. If you're just that person who has that hard time doing things outside of that, you probably need to surround yourself with people around you. Obviously, you can listen to podcasts like this. You can read inspirational things. You can listen to inspirational things. But there's this moment where you have to make that step. And if it's not inside of you, if it's not something that's an innate talent that you have, you have to try to maybe find people around you that can push you. The other thing, obviously, and I think we all say this, all journeys are start with a single step. Sometimes you have to take little tiny itsy bitsy steps to move people out of their comfort zone. You know this from being in sales, and you're in wealth management. So you have to be able to sometimes get your clients to make small decisions that allow them to make bigger decisions. You have to do those things. But I think that life, the essence of life, the things that when you're on your deathbed that you'll remember, are the things that you did that weren't the things that you were comfortable with. So if you think about it that way, if you look at it that way, it's inherent in us as human beings. Inherent is probably not the right word. It's a requisite to live a fulfilled life, that you are always seeking ways to do things that are not comfortable. I just think you have to do that. But as I said, there are some people that it comes naturally to, like me, and there's some people that it doesn't come naturally to. And if it's not natural for you and you want to have that fulfilled life, then you have to put those mechanisms in place so that you can experience that.
No, and I think I'm sure quite a few people said it, but basically what I've heard over the last few years is greatness comes when you get out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely. Life will sometimes make you get out of your comfort zone because things change. Adversity, a lot of times adversity happens without your consent. It just happens. So there are things in life that automatically push you out of your comfort zone, and you if you're a survivor, you'll figure a way out.
No, definitely. Now here's a different question for you. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh man, God, that's a great question. If I could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be? I can give you, I'm going to answer this question. Some of your audience is probably going to think this is not politically correct, but if I could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, I would have dinner with Robert E. Lee. Because if you look at what he did after the Civil War, so this is a man who gave up his entire life, right, for a cause that he believed. Well, he didn't actually believe in the cause; he believed in his state. And people don't realize that back in 1860, you were aligned to your state. That was who you were loyal to, not your country. That was just the way things got together. So he was aligned to Virginia. And he went into that with this sense of honor and duty and loyalty, and fought a losing battle from the get-go. I mean, the South was never going to win the war. And then when it was all done, and he and Ulysses S. Grant, who fought a really terrible war against Robert E. Lee and beat him because of the way he fought, they shook hands, and Robert E. Lee set everything down and ended the war. And in every other society, if you think about all of the other, like, human history, that almost never happens. Usually what happens is the vanquished goes into the hills and they start a 20-year, guerrilla warfare. And Robert E. Lee then became loyal to his country, America. And because of his actions and the actions of other people there, we have what we have today, which is a country that is the greatest country on earth. And I would love to sit down with him and just have a conversation about leadership, about what was going through his head, and understand it. Because most people don't know the story, and I'm a history buff, and to me, April 1865 was probably the moment that defined who we are today in so many ways. And sadly, nobody learns about that anymore. But that's what I would do. And if you think Robert E. Lee was a horrible racist and you want to throw stones at me, fine, post it on my Facebook page that I suck. So
no, I promise we will no stones thrown. But I think it's awesome. And if you were able to have dinner with Robert E. Lee, I would like to be a fly on the wall for that one.
Me too. That'd be good. It would be fun.
So you'd mentioned your book, which comes out, I believe, March 20th. I was curious if there's anything else exciting that you're working on you'd like to share with our listeners.
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, Sales EQ that's the project that I'm working on. I'm in my studio right now. It's consumed me for the last year, and Sales EQ is a book that's focused on ultra high performance. So instead of what most people focus on, the top 20%, I focus on the top 1% to 2% of performers. What is it that ultra high performers are doing differently than everyone else? And at the same time, I focused on something that I'm fascinated with, which is emotional intelligence, specifically how it impacts sales. So a term that we coined as we were building the book, sales-specific emotional intelligence, because I think that emotional intelligence is different as a leader or a commander of an army or a teacher or a firefighter or what have you. And we've built this book around this concept of ultra high performers, how they deal with other people, how they build relationships, the influence frameworks that they use, how they are able to manage their own disruptive emotions in order to influence the emotions of other people. And it's been a really fun ride. I'm truly nervous about the book because it's a pretty big book, and it deals with some subject matter that is complex, and I hope that we've dialed it into something that is simple and easy to understand. But that's pretty much everything. The other project that we've been working on this year, we went out beta in September. We are live now. It's been successful beyond what I believed it would be, is Sales Gravy University. And you can find Sales Gravy University at salesgravy.com. You can also find us on iOS and on the Google Play Store. So we've built a really innovative mobile learning platform that's an app on each of those mobile platforms. Sales Gravy University we spent, $300,000 building the thing. It's an innovative mobile learning, or I'll say online learning tool that allows people to learn anywhere, anytime, on any device. We have self-directed courses, and there are free courses there. So if you want to go check it out, go to salesgravy.com and check it out. But we have free courses there. But we also, where we've been most successful are our remote learning courses that are instructor-led. And these courses, like our Fanatical Prospecting Bootcamp, we have an instructor who meets with the students once every week for 8 weeks. We keep the classes super small, so we're not doing these massive online classes where there are 3,000 people there. We keep them down to 20 people. That way, you've got coaching. The instructor can deal with you. We have discussion forums and chat rooms. You have live sessions with the instructor. We have self-directed learning, so videos that fill in the gaps with homework. We're running a really successful class right now called the New Sales Manager Boot Camp. Ken Thorson's running that class. We have other experts and instructors that are teaching on our platform, and their class just started. We sold it out in a week. And people are willing to, they're willing to pay to have an expert teach them. And we limit it to 12 people so that Ken can really work with them and provide a level of coaching for new sales managers. So high substance, the people are learning the things that they need to learn in sales. I'm so excited about it. The only thing that if you talk about a project, and I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, the only thing that's driving me crazy is that there's so much work to do and so many experts that we want to meet with and bring onto our faculty that I just don't have time to drive it with all the other stuff that are going on and just running our business and Sales EQ. So all I need to do, if you could figure out how to do this, Chris, I need to clone myself. I think there's a movie about that, right? I need to clone myself for about a year so that I've got multiple me's doing all this stuff at one time.
Well, I'll tell you, that is a little bit out of my expert level, but if you figure out a way to clone anybody, please let you know, because I will invest whatever it takes to get that done. But listen, Jeb, I wanted to ask you before we let you go, if you had any parting words or advice for our listeners.
Yeah, I think the advice is if you just think about your world, is don't be a person who's defined by what's happening to you every day. Just don't do that. I'll leave you with a quick story. I was in Eastern Colorado a year ago driving. I decided to take a detour. I was leaving a client that I have in Colorado Springs, and I was going to a telecom client that I have over in Kansas, and I'd never been on the Santa Fe Trail. And you were talking about history earlier. I've got a huge library. I'm a huge history buff. I love history. And I drove down the Santa Fe Trail, and as I was driving by, I passed this little sign that said Amache on it. And again, it was late in the afternoon. I was thinking, I'm just going to keep going. And that thing, do the thing you remember, kicked on. And I turned around, went back, and there was just like this little tiny dirt road that went off into the prairie. And I'm staring down and I'm thinking, this is how horror movies get started. A man, in the middle of nowhere, is driving down this little tiny, and it was like one of those dirt roads. It was sandy and had like a grass strip in the middle. So it's like this little rut that was going out and it went over the top of this hill. And the sign's over there, Amache. And I kind of rolled forward and I moved down there, and my heart's beating because I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm just going out and nobody knows where I am. Cell phones don't work out there. I cruise down and come to this dead end, and I get out of my car. And if you looked around, there was no evidence of what had happened at Amache in 70 years earlier, except this little pavilion that had these historical signs in it. So I walked over, and I'm the guy, if you go to a battlefield or you go to a museum with me, you're done in an hour, and you're sitting in the car waiting for me. And I'm 6 hours because I read every sign, everything, take it all in, try to feel like what it was like when you were there. So nobody in my family will do anything with me that's historical because they hate me. And I'll go over and start reading the signs, and I'm so involved in the signs that I don't hear the car pull up. I don't hear the guy walk up behind me. And I'm totally startled when I hear this voice. The guy says, I was here. And I said, what? You were here? And he goes, yeah, I was here. And I pointed to the ground, like, here? And it's this old Japanese guy. And he goes, yeah, well, I was here as a kid. They brought me here. And I said, they brought you here? He goes, yeah, on a train. And at that point, I stopped and gave this guy my attention, and he walked me all over the place and showed me what it was like. Amache was a Japanese internment camp. And he, as a kid with his family, they'd been ripped out of their homes in World War II and brought to Amache to live, because there were people in the United States after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor that were afraid of the Japanese. And I'm not judging people, and I don't want to do that. I hate looking back on history with a 2020 vision, or saying, well, judging you based on where we are today. It wasn't a good thing. It certainly was a stain on America when you look at it, from a 30,000 foot standpoint. But but it's something that happened, and he was there, and I'm thinking, I'm walking around with living history. So I spent a couple of hours with him talking about it, listening to him. And I asked him a question. I just said, were you resentful? I mean, your country basically turned their back on you and locked you up with your family. And I said, were you angry? And he goes, yeah, we were mad, but we weren't resentful. He said, we never thought about it that way. He said, we looked at how we were going to get even, and we were going to get even by taking advantage of everything that America had to give us. And this guy built a successful business. Three of his kids, had 5 kids, 3 were doctors. 2 of his kids went to Harvard. One of them was a dentist, and one of them was a successful entrepreneur. And his kids had sort of encouraged him to come back to Amache. It's the first time he'd been there. He said, we just got even by being our best. They could have, right? They could have been bitter and angry and resentful, and they could have complained and they could have been victims. But instead, they got even. They got even by, instead of being defined by what happened to them, they used those circumstances as fuel to build their lives and become better. And then one day, I met this guy in the middle of nowhere, and he taught me the lesson again that I'm teaching you again, that inspired me after I left him to be better and better and better at what I do. And when I'm in a situation where I've got what Zig Ziglar called stinking thinking, when I'm thinking that my circumstances are so poor, I go back and I think about Amache, I think about Ido, I think about that meeting, and it makes my day better, because I never have had anything in my life ever happen to me that bad. And if there's something that I could leave your listeners with, I would leave them with that.
Well, that's awesome. We get even by being our best. It reminds me of a quote, and I don't remember offhand who said it, but massive success is the best revenge. I think you can either get bitter or you can get better. And I think at the end of the day, some of those things can obviously motivate you to keep on going and succeeding in life. Well, listen, Jeb, I can't thank you enough for your time as well as your awesome insight today. I truly appreciate it. And hopefully we can have you again on the podcast in the future. To sum up today's episode and our theme of the day, adversity, Jeb shared some very personal stories about his adversity and how it has all led to the person he is today, as well as the success he has achieved. Jeb discussed how adversity is the greatest teacher in the world. If used properly, it can propel you to your next success. You just can't let it keep you down. Jeb shared how in 2007 and 2008, he was forced to rethink some things in his business, but he did not let it keep him down. He ended up launching salesgravy.com, as well as writing 8 books, and refocused his career, which led to the wonderful success he has achieved today. Jeb also spoke about thinking bigger, not smaller, and he said something that I thought was very intriguing. We get even by being our best. So the question for you is, how do you handle your adversity? Do you let it knock you down and keep you down? Or when you get knocked down, do you get right back up? No matter where you are from, your age, race, or religion, at some point in our lives, adversity will hit us all. And when it does, I challenge you to get right back up and keep striving for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.